I have a great pleasure of introducing a business owner in town that I've known since I was a little kid. Growing up in a small town, Chris Neal, who I'm going to introduce, lived just 2 or 3 houses behind me on the next street. And Chris Neal is a co-owner of Neal Brothers brands. You might have been to the grocery store and seen Neal Brothers chips and things there, and various sauces and dips. And along with his brother Peter, he built up that business. Chris is also a partner and the CEO of Gianluca Neal, a business that he'll tell us more about. Chris started his business in his kitchen, but I think actually the first person to cook stuff in his kitchen was Mary, who's sitting here, his mom. And I don't know what she put in her croutons and special sauce and stuff, but Chris picked up on that and turned that love of creating things in the kitchen into a wonderful business. He started it in 1988, and I think we were in high school when you did that, right? Over here at Williams, the best high school in town. Needing to get their products to market, they started delivering out of their cars, and a distribution piece quickly evolved. They recently celebrated 35 years of business in May, and the Neal Brothers brands has developed into a renowned and respected brand in the natural and health food space in Canada, with both their Neal Brothers and Crank Coffee affiliates. The Neal Brothers distribution, as of January 1, 2023, has now merged with Gianluca Enterprises to form Gianluca Neal, and is now able to manage brands from the Maritimes all the way to Vancouver Island. Chris has, as I mentioned, primarily lived in Aurora, just behind me. Or he grew up there anyway. But he is founding member of the board of Aurora Highlands Ratepayers Association, is currently on the board of Aurora Food Pantry, and he and Wendy, over here, are lead community volunteers of the Homeward campaign at Southlake to raise much-needed funds for the NICU. Chris and Wendy are supporters of Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, Southlake Hospital, and as well as other public health and food insecurity initiatives. Chris, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you and have you share some of your kind words and wisdom tonight. Chris Neal.
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me? It's pretty cool to be up here. We were both hoodwinked into this job by another old Aurora connection. Where's Debbie Wilson? And for Steve and I to have grown up together, probably got in snowball fights and skated at the bottom of Lumsden's Pond together, for us to be here this evening is pretty special. And I would like to acknowledge my parents are here. My wife and one of my twin daughters was able to be here tonight. I've done a few speaking engagements over the years, and they've never really been able to be at one, so I thank them all for being here. It all started with a handwritten letter and $700. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Aurora Chamber of Commerce celebration of business excellence, or as I like to call it, the 3-hour life story of Chris Neal. So sit back and relax and close your eyes and know that if you miss anything of what I say tonight, Taylor Swift has picked up the rights and you'll probably see it on the screen soon. But truly, I'm honored and privileged to have been asked to be here tonight. We've done a lot of mentoring and a lot of speaking over the years about entrepreneurship primarily. And I'm glad to be able to share the stage for a couple minutes with you and maybe impart a few thoughts or give you a little encouragement. $700 and a handwritten letter, that's how it started. The backdrop is the deal in our house was that we had to pay for half of our university education. And we needed jobs and summer jobs, and I lucked into one at Wonderland, which required incredible amounts of hours. Sometimes up to 100 hours a week until the high school kids got out because the park had to open. And it brought on a whole lot of respect and responsibility and learning and organizational skills and leadership skills at a very young age. My brother was running 2 different jobs. He wanted a car, he was at Bishop's, and we never really saw each other. So he's sitting in second-year economics class at Bishop's University writing a handwritten letter, because that's what we used to do in those days. And he said, why don't we get together after you leave Queen's, and let's do something together. With our 2 skills, we could really do something. I don't know really what that is, but we could do something. I had no plans. Everyone in my political science class was going to be a lawyer except for me, so I would dutifully kind of half put up my hand like I thought maybe I would just because I didn't want to feel like a loser. But we quickly decided that this really could work. And we thought it would be an experiment, really, no more than that. But what were we going to do? Well, Pete had come back from a trip to Dartmouth and had seen a little brand called Cape Cod potato chips that was just starting. Cape Cod, Miss Vicky's, and Kettle Chips were all recreating and elevating the line of potato chips into craft brands. And craft brands were big back in the 80s. So we didn't have any money, so we decided, well, we can't do that. And we went back to the KISS principle, which is keep it simple, stupid, and landed on croutons. So we both made croutons for salads. There was only one box crouton on the market. And we thought, well, we could pull this off. We could do this. Food at the time had very low barriers to entry, I'm afraid to tell you all. You could put anything in a jar or anything in a bag, put a label on it. We didn't even hand seal ours. We used ribbon from a local, Mrs. Lawrence was a local hoarder of fine crafts, etc., and she gave us tons of ribbon. My mom hand wrote our first cards, our first stickers that were stuck onto the bags, and there was something very simple about it. We weren't worried about it. We weren't scared about it. It just kind of evolved. Question was, we needed bread knives and we needed some day-old bread. So while the experimenting all started in Mom and Dad's kitchen on Hawthorne, we quickly realized that we need a consistent supply of bread and a consistent supply of stale day-old bread, which is not an easy thing to find. So we hit a couple bakeries in town, and they'd give us a rye and a pumpernickel and a brown, and well, that leads to no consistency in your product. So we happened upon a little wholesale baker at the corner of Industrial and Wellington, and that changed our world. We walked in, he said, "What are you trying to do?" We said, "Why don't you show up tonight?" He threw us the keys, said $5 an hour, lock up when you leave, and that was the start of a very long relationship. We eventually took the entire bakery over, and he brought in product from outside sources. We couldn't afford boxes, so we went to the LCBO. If you wanted 9 bags of croutons, you could get 9 bags of croutons. If you wanted 15 bags, you could get 15 bags. We knew no different. It was easy. We were dumb, but it worked. To give you an idea of the timeline, we finalized the concept of the pretzel, or of the crouton, on the 24th of April. It was a Sunday. I just arrived back from Queens. And on May the 18th, we took our first product out to 10 stores. So in the course of 3 weeks, we finalized what our product was going to be, figured out how we were going to make it, came up with a name, and that was one of the longest conversations we had. I still remember the 4 of us sitting around the table and Hawthorne Valley croutons, and we came up with everything. And someone said, well, why don't we just do Neal Brothers? And we thought, well, then Neal Brothers works. And Neal Brothers was born 35 years ago. We hit 6 stores. Oak Ridge's Fruit Market was our first one. He said no, and then we had a friend in the audience at the time who was in the produce section. She said, Anthony, you're 19 or 20. When you first started, we supported you. You're going to buy product from these boys. We went around to 10 more of the 9 more of the nicest stores in the GTA. 5 more said yes, and 4 said no. Within 4 months, all of them were dealing with us, and some of them were mad that we had never actually come to see them the first time, and they just had forgotten that a couple of kids showed up with some croutons. The irony was the very first night we were celebrating it with dinner. And we're sitting around the dining room table and the phone rang. So I went and picked up the phone and the gentleman said, well, hi Chris, it's Anthony from Oak Ridge's Food Market. Sure. No, Chris, it's Anthony from Oak Ridge's Food Market. And we're sold out of your croutons, we need more. Well, the celebration stopped, the wine got corked, the beers got put back in the fridge, and Peter and I hit the bakery. And so life began. The very first weekend of that $700, we took our girlfriends at the time, Wendy being one, and my brother's girlfriend at the time, and we went downtown and blew $250 of it on an evening out. Again, we come back to not the smartest knives in the drawer. That manufacturing, which started, we'd create product, we'd throw it in garbage bags, and we'd bring it home and we'd pack it at the kitchen table. We eventually took the entire bakery over. We went from cutting by hand to a machine. We went from hand spraying out of little things our olive oil and vegetable oil on top of our dry bread to paint machines. You can only imagine what the place was like. And we took the kitchen over probably at our peak, probably 20 hours a day. Quite often we'd end up there. A few times we slept on the bags of flour at night. We received a really large order from one manufacturer and we didn't know how to do it, so you do what you had to do, and we got it done, but it was killer. We went from delivering out of our cars to the bakery owner's van, as long as we had it back in time so he could pick up his children from daycare, to our first Ford panel van, to our first cube van and a full-time driver, and eventually a fleet of trucks on the road. What changed our world was launching of tortillas and salsa in the early 90s. And for two reasons. First of all, we got into the snack food business and out of the crouton business. And secondly, we were the guys that put tortilla chips into the snacking section. Every tortilla chip at the time was in the ethnic food section. We came up with a lighter, crispier snacking tortilla chip. And we convinced stores to put that into their snack food section beside the potato chips. We also thought, well, we're doing a nacho, why don't we do a dip with it? And we created little hanging racks that hung beside our nachos with our salsa in it. If we'd had a little more money at the time or some venture capital behind us, we probably could have blown the world apart with tortillas and salsa, but that wasn't the case, and it was part of the journey. We added a warehouse because the tortilla chips and salsas were co-packed for us. So a little place on Industrial Parkway where McNally's jeweler had a little back area, and that's where we took our finished croutons and our tortillas and salsa. And we knew something had gone wrong when we got a call from one of our stores saying, I need an order, and we said, well, we're both too busy making croutons to get you the order. And then we thought, this isn't the way we want to go. We had no money to take production to the next level, though we'd taken it pretty far. And so we closed up the bakery, moved to Concord, picked up a warehouse, and became true distributors with a co-packing brand name attached to it. So for years, while you've seen Neal Brothers nachos and salsa on the shelf, or in our early years, our friends would see our croutons out on the shelf, what you didn't know was there was a large group of products that backed that line up. And we helped introduce products like Cape Cod potato chips, ironically. We were a huge distributor of kettle chips, Cliff bars. We brought Tazo tea to Canada when Red Rose at $2.99 was the most expensive tea you could buy. We were the guys behind Kicking Horse Coffee. Unfortunately, not the money behind it, but we were the distributors and the salespeople behind it. We had that brand for 19 years. Leslie Stowe Raincoast Crisp, which changed the whole business of crackers in the business. Cars Table wafers at $2.99 was kind of the big thing. We brought a $6.99 cracker to the market and blew it up. She sold to Dare. And we're the current distributors for LaCroix, to give you an idea of some of the lines that we've helped pioneer over the years. Lines that we've seen, we thought are interesting, they thought fit with our bracket. We've been helped to pioneer many of those brands. We've taken them on almost as our own. The biz always ran as one entity from a financial perspective, even though they were two. And a few years ago, due to a deal with a cannabis company, which we won't go into right now, we split the two companies formally and had them running as separate businesses. As Mr. Falk so nicely put, on January 1st of this year, we merged our distribution business. And this was a big move for us. After 35 years of Peter and I looking across the table saying, what the hell, we had some bench strength. We picked up our business from Richmond Hill and moved over to Vaughan to a 77,000 square foot facility. We're one of the few distributors in the country that can actually distribute refrigerated and frozen items as well as shelf-stable items. We have about 150 staff. We go coast to coast. We have a facility in BC that's probably too small very soon, and we'll have to blow that up and create that. And we certainly are recognized as Canada's largest family-owned natural foods distribution business. And I think that's what we're really proud of. $700 and a handwritten letter. A couple of things that you should pick up on here. Necessity is the motherhood of invention. A couple of these are expressions we grew up in our house. We didn't start out to be a distributor, we started out to be a brand. Well, how are we going to get our croutons to the market? Well, we better throw them in the cars. We had 2 Volkswagen Rabbits at the time. We threw them in the Rabbits, and that's how we made our deliveries. We all need a little luck. And walking into that bakery that afternoon, we got lucky. We met a great guy who Didn't ask for any ID, didn't ask for proof of anything, no money down, just said, here are the keys, lock up when you're done. And most importantly, for a lot of the businesses here tonight, one of our dad's favorite expressions was, an airliner uses an inordinate amount of its fuel to simply get off the ground. Then the climb starts. We put a lot of hours in those early years, they paid off, and the jet took off. We were lucky, we worked hard. A couple of things I want to tell you beyond the story, because the story is much deeper than this. What sustains us? Why are we still at it? We've kept it real, we've kept it exciting. From the very beginning, we dreamt. It was one of the things that kept us going. The two of us would be in the bakery at 2 o'clock on a Friday night, and our friends would be out partying. And we dreamt. Where are they going to go? What are we going to do with the company? If someone came with $500,000 tomorrow, would we sell it? Well, that wouldn't be a bad deal for a company that was probably doing about $7,000 in revenue at the time. But we always dreamt. Shoot for the stars. We made sure to celebrate our triumphs, and we still work today to recall our ups and downs. Obviously, reduce the number of downs. Don't live in the past, learn from it. Cherish the journey. I do a lot of mentoring, and the first thing I say to everyone who comes to me with a product or an idea, an actual product, not an idea, and I tell them to be proud. A lot of people walk around with ideas and never get that far, and you've come to me with something. You've taken a step that 98 people have never taken out of the 100. Also, I think it's very important to cherish where you are at the time, in your journey. And I don't think we do a good enough job of it. We're always cognizant of what we aren't and not of where we are. I've come a long way, Peter and I. We've celebrated many different journeys, or many different wins, certainly a number of losses. But we've always tried to take a little bit of time and say, we should be proud right now. Right now. And I encourage you all to do that. Take some time during the journey to congratulate yourselves and be proud of where you are. We're people first. People are the most important part of our business. Whether it's the team members we choose to spend our days with, whether it's the brands we work with, whether it's the retailers or the service partners that we have. They sustain you, they encourage you, they make life fun, they give you something to strive for. Something that resonates for me both personally and professionally. Never forget where you have been, never lose sight of where you're going, and never take for granted the people who travel the journey with you. We do things like macro-managing. We don't micromanage at the office. We have pizza lunches. We still hold Christmas parties. We do bonuses. We cheerlead. We honor tenure. The latest one we've honored now is at 10 years you get a very expensive bread knife. And that's to honor going back to our crouton days and to say when you break bread, and one day you will not be breaking bread with us, but when you break bread as a family, I hope you'll remember some of the good times you have with us. No job is too small, no task is too small. It's good for your employees to see you doing it. You can ask anyone to do anything if you've taken the time to do it yourself. And maybe most importantly, always have a few balls in the air. Never turn down a coffee. You never know where it will take you. Pursuit of excellence, why we're here tonight. Internal pride to be the best. Our parents always stress, we don't care what you do with your life, just be the best at it. For us, our name is highly visible. It's on our distribution company name, it's on packages around town, and even our images are on there now. We have a lot to strive for. We have a lot to be proud of. It's a quest for excellence. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our families, we owe it to our employees, we owe it to our brands and to our retailers. Life is better when excellence is the goal. Again, shoot for the stars. You land on the moon, it's not a bad thing. Internal happiness amongst your staff, fewer complaints, positive word of mouth. Employee retention, employee attraction. It's better for your business. I'm not sure that there is a direct correlation between the pursuit of excellence and a healthy bottom line, but I'm willing to bet there is. In today's world, it gives you an added edge. Your competitors are striving for it, you better be striving for it too. This fall, my brother and I were inducted into the Grocery Magazine Hall of Fame, and it was probably one of the proudest moments I've had in the business. We let them know how humbled we were to be part of some of the biggest names in the business, and they assured us that we had earned our space there. Again, the pursuit of excellence, good things will come. Just as importantly tonight in this group, the absolute need for community and support. It's been stressed a couple times tonight. 560 members of the Chamber of Commerce here. Be proud. It's a great community. Use it. The life of an entrepreneur is tough. Not fully understood or appreciated by anyone but fellow entrepreneurs and their families. You are the backstop in most cases. If you are a single owner, who else can actually understand the scenario when your internet crashes at the very moment you're on the phone trying to collect cash so you could make this week's payroll and you're down 2 staff because they unexpectedly didn't show up today? Probably your buddy on Bay Street won't. Your fellow entrepreneur will. Your responsibilities are real. Cash flow, personnel, success. You are the consummate juggler, directly involved in every aspect of your business. It can be a lot. Our biz would not be around if it wasn't for the unconditional love and support of so many people in our lives, but most specifically our wives. We stress this every time we get up to speak. If our wives had demanded a little more gifts, a few more trinkets in the early days, we wouldn't have done it on our $8,000 salary. When Wendy and I got married, I made $800 a month. I gave $200 to the government. I had $600 left. I paid my fair share of rent, and there wasn't much left after that. And there were some dark days, and I wouldn't have done it continuously if it hadn't been for the lady in the corner. Peter and I were lucky. We married into 2 ladies who came from entrepreneurial families. Both grandfathers had started businesses. Both had 2 brothers on either side. And on the next generation, both businesses blew up. They crashed. They didn't make it to the 3rd generation. Families stopped talking to each other. We vowed very early on that that would not happen to us. Family would be more important. And I credit both Lara and Wendy for that. This support group here tonight is incredible. At its core is a forum where people can be understood and can learn from each other. Use it. I took this off the website. As a progressive community leader, the Aurora Chamber of Commerce is a supportive and educational resource for business people and is committed to the enhancement of community prosperity and moving business forward. The most important thing to me when I read that is a supportive and educational resource for business people. It's not just the seminars that you agree to attend, the speakers you bring in, it's the people sitting around beside you. Most of them have done what you've done, they've had the problem you've had. If you're open, you can learn a lot. Use it, milk it. We founded a Young Entrepreneur Association when we were in our early years. I think it was 1989. We actually got to the point where Royal Bank backed us because it was the only place we could find where people understood our problems and our issues. Our friends from university who had gone on to law school or Bay Street couldn't understand what it was like to know that you were late tonight because the toilet had backed up and you were the only guy left. Today, I'm very fortunate to be part of an incredible group of entrepreneurs still, a group that meets regularly and somewhat formally discuss not only business concerns, but personal issues as well. And I commend you to look at that side, especially in today's world. Mental health is real. Please. And the last group, which is sometimes the group that people don't tend to lean on, is your own teams, your employees. Businesses are like families. We spend more time with our employees than we do with our families. Support goes both ways. I'm sure you've lent us shoulder on numerous occasions. Don't be afraid to let them know what's going on. Don't be afraid to ask them for support. So enough storytelling and preaching for tonight. The life of an entrepreneur is not an easy one for the entrepreneur or for their families. It can shift between excitement, stress, exhilaration, and multitasking. And that's not the life for everyone. But it can be an extremely enriching, rewarding, and exciting journey. It is the only life I've ever known, and after recently celebrating our 35th anniversary in business, I feel so lucky it's the path that I chose. And I wish that all for you here tonight. In sum, every organization should be honored to see their name up on the screens tonight, win or not. But to me, more importantly, each and every entrepreneur, each and every business person, franchisee, self-employed, tag hanger, this evening should be celebrated and congratulated on taking the risk of starting their own business. So many people say I have an idea, but few, a very small few, actually take the step to try to turn that idea into a business. So to all of you, I raise a glass tonight and say a heartfelt cheers. Cheers.